Since 2009, it has been our goal to support, promote, engage, and inspire the arts community by igniting the ghost light that shines on the stages of the up-and-coming, the unsung heroes, the brilliant writers, and the dynamic designers. Our podcast breaks the fourth wall to give you an inside look at the plays and the players. Stay tuned. Rep Radio is on the air. Welcome to Rep Radio. I'm your host, Darnell Radford, and we're in an echoey place today. We're actually in a classroom, and it's kind of fitting because I'm here with Terry Brennan of Tribe of Fools, and we're here to talk about the solo performance of School Play, which is part of the Solo Festival.
Yeah.
Which I didn't realize. I just knew you were doing it at the same time. I don't know why I didn't make the connection. That's great. Because we love Solo Fest. We just weren't paying attention. But the last time we chatted, which I think was the summer, it's always hot. It's always a grossly hot day. And I'm like, I trust you. The studio is normally very cool, but we have to turn the air off for now.
Oh, yeah.
So we talked briefly about it, but the focus then was Antihero. And but now you've got this piece, and you've put a lot of work into it, and here it is. It's out for the world to see. So catch us up. Tell us again about School Play.
Well, so I put this together last summer, and I've wanted to do a solo piece for a long time. And last summer, Solo Fest, I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make part of a show. I'm going to put it up in front of like a limited audience, like 4 nights, maybe something like that, and get some feedback. And so I found the director, Jack Tambury. He'd been recommended to me from a couple of people, and I'm like, I just want to like do something a little bit different. Like I still want it to be Tribe of Fools, but I want to like kind of break out of what we do with ensemble stuff and multiple people. Mm-hmm. So I thought Jack was a good fit. We did it last Solo Fest, and we legitimately just put up like 30-ish minutes of material that was kind of linked. Like we linked it just for the sake of like presenting it to an audience that was pay what you can, but the response we got was really, really positive. I had, after every performance, at least one person came up to me and was like, you need to come do this at my school for the teachers who work there. And we did like between last year and then this remount this year, where we added material and made it longer and sussed it out more, we did the show at like 3 different institutions, including like the University of Pennsylvania. We did a high school up in Boston. We did a teacher's like in-service in South Jersey, and like people just loved it. So that was kind of like, we were just going to present it and be like, what do you think, Philadelphia? Like, how can we work on this? And it just kind of like took off. So we did decide that we were going to do it this year. We had made that decision last year. I had some commitments that kind of got in the way, so it got pushed. We were going to do it in March, but then it got pushed towards the summer, and I was like, why not just do it in Solo Fest again? It's a solo show. Yeah. And in some ways, it's almost like better for me, I feel like, to bring it back to Solo Fest and do it as a part of the festival, because kind of that's where it was born, and also that's when people are looking for stuff like that. Yeah. You know, it's not always the case that people are like, I'm looking for a show with one person that may or may not be fun. Mm-hmm. So it was a good place to kind of like showcase it.
And I think there's always this thought of like, I think there was this mindset with a world premiere. It's like, oh, we've already done it there, so we can't do it again.
Yeah.
It's like, no, why not bring it back?
Yeah.
Especially if it's not as, tedious to bring, and, to think that the entire potential of audience that has seen it, that could see it, has already seen it, is, not realistic. People who haven't seen it yet. So.
Well, I mean, and if you think about it, like the 4 or 5 performances we did, I think we had a total of like 50 people, like total that came and saw it. So obviously there's still like plenty more people who haven't seen it who might, they probably go to Solo Fest who might have maybe seen the name last year and I was like, oh, I was going to see that, but I didn't have time or what have you. But you're right. Like you get you stuck in that idea that like, you're like, well, we already like did this at this festival and like, so we shouldn't do it again. And that's kind of silly. Yeah. So I love Solo Fest. I love kind of the idea. When I first got to Philadelphia, there weren't a lot of like one person shows going on. And I've always been really fascinated with the idea of like, how do you put on a play and tell a story with a single actor? Like, what is that? And so it was, and so I love the fact that there's an organization that's like dedicated to doing that and also kind of dedicating to being like, hey, artists, have you ever thought about doing this? It's totally casual. We've got this casual setup.
It's totally cash.
Yeah, you don't have to like
pay what you can.
You don't have to like pay $300 like you do have to be a part of the Fringe. There's not going to be like the marketing is on you. You can do as much or as little as you want. Like a lot of times they're in houses. I really like that aspect because as an artist, that is the reason that I felt last year I was able to do the show. I was able to like, because it was very new and scary, and I knew that I could probably do it. I'm like, but I think we all have that, everyone knows that feeling of like, knowing you can probably do something, but then forcing yourself to try it. And I feel like the way Solo Fest is set up, it really lends itself to that. And I think that, I hope we see more Philadelphia artists who don't normally do stuff like 1 or 2 person shows, like really kind of take up that mantle and give it a try, because I think that when it's done well, like it's really a fascinating medium.
Yeah. Well, what was I going to say? Police activity. And it's, there is a hesitation to think about like, how can I carry a 1 hour or an hour and a half monologue essentially as one person. That in itself, I could see the justifiable anxiety, but then there's some, there's a whole lot of movement in this piece. And at many moments, like you have elements of parkour and circus arts in there that I'm just like, oh my God, I feel like you have to sleep. Like just to do this for an hour, you've got to sleep the rest of the day. And because I felt the same way when I went to see Saturday Night Fever. Oh yeah. And it's like line, dance. Line, dance, line, dance. It's way more dance, and I feel like at the end they're just like they get rides to wherever they live for the night, and they have to sleep the whole time because there's so much energy in it. For this, anyone who knows you and Tribe of Fools will notice some of the elements that you brought in there. These elements of circus arts and parkour, which I thought was kind of cool for a 4th grader to be like educating in a 4th grade class and his teacher on parkour and how cool it is.
Yeah. Well, that was Jack's idea. We originally were going to have, I said that what we need is we have to sort of like introduce who the character is. So we have to give a presentation at the top of the show. Like I was like, and I'd love it to be a PowerPoint, but I don't think that a 4th grader would be sufficient or not, like tech savvy enough. Although, actually nowadays they are. But we also, since it was like Solo Fest, I was like, well, let's like play the whole like 4th grade angle because I don't want to do projections. We didn't have time to like throw that together. And I was like, I was like, what's the 4th grade version of a PowerPoint? I'm like, probably just giant cards.
Yeah, foam board.
And so he was the one though, and I said, and that way that'll give us, that's the first thing we should do. It kind of tells us who we're dealing with. And Jack was like, we had bounced around a bunch of ideas, and then one day Jack was like, would you be okay if it's about parkour? And I probably wouldn't have suggested that, probably because I would be too worried that it was too similar to my actual self. And Jack was like, no, I think that's perfect. I said, because you're already doing a hyperactive kid. You're already doing, it's like semi-autobiographical. So there's no reason to hide from that. Let's just do it on parkour. And I'm like, great, let's do it on parkour. And the one of my favorite moments of the evening usually is watching everyone put it together when I say my history report will be on, and then I flip that first card over and I go, parkour. And there's this beat, and then everyone usually starts to like laugh at different volumes because they're like, wait, is that what he's about to do his presentation on? And then it's a lot of fun from there on out. But I really love watching that reaction come from people because I think it's like such a surprise. But then also it sets up the idea that the kid can do all sorts of other like silly, crazy things throughout the course of the show, and we've kind of justified it by laying that down. And that was the stuff that I did in school. It wasn't called parkour when I was in school.
Yeah.
It was called being bad. And but that's all we did is we would run as fast as we could towards walls and see how many feet we could put on them before we finally fell back down. Or at skating parties, that's dating me. We would go to like roller skating parties, but I would roller skate as fast as I could into this like waist level cement wall, and I would hit it as hard as I could to see if I could launch my feet up and over. And on a good day, I would land back on my feet. Most days I would just fall on my back. But like I would spend the whole time doing that until one of the teenage like skate referees would come over and be like, "Son, you can't do that."
Yeah.
So that also, I felt, set the character up to be like, this is a kid. We've all met this kid, and these are the problems he has when he tries to, when he's trying to learn. Is that like he gets distracted by a lot of things, one of which is his restlessness.
Wouldn't it be funny if in fourth grade, because I know that this wasn't an observation of my teachers, because I was somewhat like this kid. But at the same time, I feel like it wasn't until later that someone sort of steered me towards theater. And I feel like if I were a teacher now and I said, this kid who has all this energy, musical theater. This is musical theater right here. Let's try to harness that into something great, and probably find many great ways to learn, great ways to teach this child through embracing all of that instead of trying to repress it, which that's what I took away from school play. It's kind of like the world is telling the fourth grade you that you're not learning right.
Yeah.
And, it kind of asks this question, like, who gets to say that? And how do we know that the difference is the way someone learns is right or wrong?
Well, yeah, and it's tricky because this show centers around sort of academic schooling, because that's where I had a lot of most of my problems growing up. But I teach at the Philadelphia School of Circus Arts, and so I get kids in all the time who are really hyperactive, but as long as you aim them the right way, they jump over things, or they climb ropes, or they do whatever they're going to do. But I also get kids who come in whose parents put them in because clearly, I mean, no one's ever told me this, but clearly you can see as these kids try things and don't do super well, that their parents said, "Oh, you're not very coordinated. We'll take you to the circus school. That'll make you more coordinated." And that's totally fine. But I, as a teacher, have to remember that just because most of the kids can do X, if this other child comes along and is terribly uncoordinated or having a really hard time with a skill that everyone else seems to be getting right a little bit sooner, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not trying or that they're learning wrong or that this and that. I just have to remember that, like, this is not their natural environment. And my job is not to help them become an amazing parkour athlete or an amazing aerialist. I mean, if that happens, stellar. But really, the reason they came in is because they need to get more coordinated than they are now. So I need to watch their progress. I need to see when they're making progress, what's holding them up, how we can overcome what's holding them up, and move them along at a pace that is challenging but not overwhelming for them.
Yeah.
And pardon me. And that was something that I felt when I was that I wished more teachers, I had teachers who were like that, but I wish more teachers in my academic time thought like that. But most of them would tell me, or a very regular thing I heard was, you are really intelligent, but you're just not applying yourself. Like, and you start to believe that, because if everyone says it, you start to be like, well, it must be true. I must not be applying myself. What's wrong with me? Why am I not applying myself? I must be like bad or lazy or just some sort of jerk. And then that affects you in other ways, and it's a downward spiral from there. And that was kind of why I wanted to make this show, is that I see a lot of kids at the circus school who do really well at the things I tell them to do, and they're the ones who are like wiggling all day at school, and they have this. They're lucky enough to have this time with me, but not everyone has dance in their life, or parkour, or aerialist stuff, or like a lot of people don't have that outlet, and they're being told like daily, they're like, stop wiggling, be still, you're not trying, but they are trying. And I think sometimes we just need to slow down a little bit and just kind of like really accept kids where they are. And that's hard, because I teach kids. Sometimes they make me really mad, like really, really mad. But I have to remember that, like, I'm one of like a handful of adults in their life who are talking to them as if I have all the answers, and whether they realize I don't or not, they might take it that way. So I have to be really careful how I deal with them. And I just sometimes wish that I've seen teachers at the circus school. I've seen teachers where I've done residencies in high schools where I wish the teachers were a little more patient and a little less like, get with the program, bud. Because that can be really tough and has a big impact on the way you feel about yourself.
So what elements of that you remember as a fourth grader were left out of school play?
Let's see. We would just tell stories. Like, so the process was, we had a couple of ideas of what we wanted, and then Jack would just ask me questions, and I would just tell him weird stories about things that happened to me, and then we would see if they would fit in like a school setting. And I'm trying to think some of the things that didn't make it in, like the story that I tell everyone about high school is when I got to high school the first day, and the reason we chose to use the kind of desk we do for school play, which is one of those desks where the desk is attached to the chair, is I actually didn't have those in grade school, but when I got to high school, we had those, and I never fit in them. Like, no matter where, they were always uncomfortable. I couldn't sit still. And then when I would go to like move or fidget, since they were attached, I couldn't find a way to get comfortable. At the end of my first day of high school, I was like leaving, and this very nice administrator lady was like, I think one of the teachers was giving me a ride home. And so they were like, well, see you later, Bill. Hey, who's this? He's like, this is Terry. And she's like, hey, Terry, how was your first day of high school? And I was like, it was really hard. I can't get comfortable in any of the chairs, and I just couldn't focus. And this poor lady, I think she thought I was going to be like, it was great, I can't wait to learn. Or, I mean, there's probably a million other things she thought were going to come out of my mouth, from like great to, I don't know. But instead I gave her this very specific problem, and she stared at me for like 30 seconds, like not sure what to say. And she goes, you'll get used to it. And which I never really did.
Inside, she's like, we went over budget for those chairs.
Yeah, right. She's like,
it was a fight.
Do you know how much those chairs
Board
cost?
of Education meetings we had just to get those chairs. We had to fire a janitor to get those chairs.
Oh my gosh, that hurts because it's probably true. But one of the things that in that particular class, I got so frustrated with my algebra teacher, so bored and distracted, et cetera, that during my algebra class, I would sneak around and crawl around. We were in a chemistry room, so there was like countertops, so I could get on my hands and knees and hide behind countertops. I would crawl around the room, and I would just tear tiles off the floor. And I forget why I did it. I think I started one day because there were some loose tiles by me, and I just ripped one up, and it made like the loudest noise. And the teacher didn't even notice. And then I was like, maybe two. And then I did 2, and she was kind of oblivious. She was a very weird lady. So then I was like, oh, it's on. I'm gonna, crawl around this room, and I am going to tear up as many tiles as I can before this lady notices. And I did this for 2 weeks. For 2 weeks, I spent my entire algebra class on my hands and knees, tearing up tiles, and then I put them in a neat pile right underneath my chair. So it was super obvious
Oh my God.
who was tearing these up.
Like, I hope someone's watching.
And the thing is like somewhere around a week, she's like, I've noticed that some of the tiles aren't on the floor anymore. Does anybody know why that is? And like all the students were like snickering and like, nope, no idea. And I kept doing it for another week. And I was blown away that it took me this long to get caught. Because again, I was like, making a pile under my desk. It was really obvious who was taking these tiles. And all it would take is one person to walk around and just kind of look around and then be like, wait a minute, what's that? There's like 25 tiles under here.
Does anybody clean this room?
Yeah.
Nobody know.
And so she finally caught me after like 2 weeks of doing this, which was like the biggest ongoing joke in the algebra class. And she said to me when she caught me, she did one of those things that adults do where they think they're a step ahead when in fact they're not. She goes, word to the wise, next time you want to do something like that, don't just put the tiles under your desk.
Yeah,
it was like, very obvious.
Oh man, I should have put them under someone else.
I know. I was like, oh rats, you got me, Batman. I had no idea. But so yeah, there was that. That was one. I used to just come up with things. When I was in the 6th grade, I decided there was this punishment you would get if you were really out of hand, which was called isolation. They would put you out in the hallway, and you'd have to sit at a desk by yourself and think about the fact that whatever you had done. I made the decision in September of 6th grade that I was going to be isolated 20 times before Christmas. So every day I would come in, I'm like, is today one of those days? What should I do? What is really going to get the ire of this teacher so, like, get him so deep? And I think I got like 10 or 11 before a neighbor's dad was like, so Matt tells me that you're trying to get isolated 20 times before Christmas. And I was like, I mean, yeah. He's like, so I'm just curious, like, what do you get out of that? Like, why would you do that? Does that make your life better? And like, I felt like weird and embarrassed, and I didn't do it. But it was because even though me and that guy didn't get along, he engaged me as a person and legitimately was like, let's break this down and talk about it. But instead, the teachers would be like, I knew it, you're so bad, get out in the hall. And I'd be like, score.
Yeah.
So it was this weird, like, I used to make a lot of goals like that, where I was like, here's what we're going to do. It was like a plan. I would like, because I was a pretty motivated kid. So I would like come up with like things to do to make my teachers angry, and then see like how, I was always surprised at how long I had to push before they would get mad. And this was in my later time, I think. The school play deals with when I was in 4th or 5th grade. That was when I made the decision. I got really frustrated with the way I was being treated at school, and that's when I decided. I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna play along anymore. I'm gonna. Yeah. By the end of school play, you see the kid make a decision that he's like, now I'm gonna be bad, because before that he's just getting into trouble by mistake. So some of these stories were a little more of like a later Terry. Early on, all I wanted to do was be like the best student. I wanted to get straight A's, which I never did. I wanted the teacher to be like, no, that's Terry, the smart kid. That never really happened. And a lot of it was because I just had a really hard time, like being still. I had a really hard time sitting and listening. And I had a really hard time. If we were reading in class, I was killing it. Yeah. If I had to go home and read independently, I had a really hard time just remembering what I read. I would read it, I had great comprehension, but I'd usually read it and I'd be thinking about something else, and I'd finish like 5 pages of text and be like, I have no idea what I just read.
Sometimes you get a really great teacher. Like I remember I had a teacher in, I feel like it was 2nd grade, because I did some moving around in the earlier years. But I remember in 2nd grade having a music teacher who was a lot like Weird Al Yankovic. Like a younger Weird Al, like not so much the hair, but there were moments where I was like, he's kind of Weird Al, just thinking back on it. But I remember he had all these fun ways to teach us about the notes and everything. Mm-hmm. And I remember he referred to the, I guess it's the G clef.
Yes.
As the mama clef. And he was like, this is the mama clef, and these are all the babies and everything. And we would sing these songs like, don't count your chickens before they're hatched.
Yes.
And I remember all of those songs, but then I moved and went to another music class where the teacher was, who can tell me what this is? And I shut down because in my head I wanted to be like, that's the mama clef. And it was like, that wasn't called for, that wasn't going to be appreciated in this class. And that is the moment I can point to when I could have gone somewhere in music, but I was detoured right there.
And it's tough because, it's funny you say that because like I had this really weird music teacher who was very similar to what you said. Like we did all these rhymes and they were kind of cheesy, but I still liked them. Like I thought at the time, I was like, this is kind of silly, but I kind of like it.
Yeah.
And she was, luckily for me, that was my school music teacher. And I had a piano teacher similar to what you're talking about and she was, it's such the way a teacher relates to you makes such a difference. And it's hard because I see, like now being on the other side of it and like teaching on a regular basis, I just, no matter what, try to make what we're doing fun. And sometimes you have to take a little bit of a detour because there's stuff you got to get.
Yeah.
But every chance I get, I try to make it enjoyable. And the reason is because like you were saying with like, and now we're going to learn what an A sharp is. And you're like, power down.
Yeah.
Especially if you're dealing with material that kids find challenging. There's an age everyone gets to where you realize that you don't have to try. Like, no one can make you try.
Yeah.
I mean, but you don't realize that until a little bit later in your childhood. But when that button goes off, you're like, wait a minute, you can't actually make me try. I'm not gonna. It's really hard to get him back. And
how does he have perfect attendance that he's failing every class?
Right? And I had a teacher named Mr. Schluter when I was a freshman in high school, and he was the English teacher and something else. And he really got me. And some of the teachers didn't like him. He wore crazy ties. And I always thought that was, even as a 14-year-old, I thought it was really weird that the other teachers were like, I don't appreciate his weird penguin tie or the tie that looks like a fish. And I'm like, how uptight are you that you are judging another adult man on like everything else? He's got the dress pants, the white shirt, like he looks the part, and then his tie's a little zany, like that's too fun for you. But he was really good at, he not only like understood like me and a lot of the other students who were having a hard time with things, but a bigger one is that like he really waited when something wasn't working to see exactly what was going on. There was one instance where I was very obviously cheating on a spelling test. I was writing my answers, and after I wrote my answer, I would like look at the other dudes just to double check. I was literally just checking my work on someone else's page. And about halfway through the test, I remember Mr. Schluter just announcing to the room, he goes, remember that looking at other people's papers is cheating, even if you're just checking your work. Just trust that you've done the work. Now, he could have come over and like scrapped, like totally taken my test and be like, you get a 0. But he waited to understand, like, okay.
But so he realized what you were doing.
Yeah, he's like, he knew I wasn't pulling the information. But I had a lot of other teachers who, in that very same circumstance, would have blown up and would have made it about like the fact that like I was cheating or transgressing, or that like I was like insulting their authority.
Yeah.
When in fact, now if I was taking the answers, also knowing Mr. Schluter, he probably would have been like, all right, remember, cheating is cheating. Like, he's the kind of guy that would give like a warning shot.
Yeah.
And then if you didn't follow up, he's like, all right, we got to talk. And I just wish there was more of that. I've seen that in my time where teachers kind of blow up at kids. And like you develop the kids that make you crazy. You're like, this kid makes me crazy. Mm-hmm. But you have to work extra hard not to just jump to conclusions when they do something that makes you upset. Because that's not really fair to them. Because sometimes I've done that and then I've asked them, why are you doing this? And they'll explain it. And I'm like, okay, I owe you an apology. Okay, sorry. All right, sorry. Everyone here, I just made a mistake. And that's really big for me to tell kids I made a mistake in front of other kids because you don't see that very often. Adults really don't like to admit, especially in front of really young kids.
Do you think teachers feel that way about certain kids because there's sort of like this unspoken wall between them? Example, like I feel like sometimes when I'm in a work environment, people who really enjoy your company, they still sort of tread lightly on how close they get to you. Like some people feel weird about giving a hug or things like that. And do you think like teachers feel that way because anything they do could be construed as like something problematic?
Yeah, that actually that was a problem I've run into when I was younger as a teacher, where one of the things, I had a kid once who came over, I was teaching Shakespeare to kids at Allen's Lane Art Center in Mount Airy, and one of the kids, I mean a lot of the kids really liked me, but one of the kids thought I was like the bee's knees. He thought like it was, and as we were watching monologues, he came over and he placed himself, we were all sitting on the floor, in my lap, and he took my arms and he like wrapped my arms around him. And I was like, and I felt really bad because then I let go and I had to pick him up and set him down. I go, we don't sit on each other's laps when we watch stuff. And it was mainly, I was flattered, but it was mainly because I didn't want it to be perceived as problematic. And I've never been super good with the professional barrier. Like I'm pretty friendly with
I don't
have
students.
It either. Yeah. But I see it. I know a lot of people who do it, and they do it for exactly the reason you're talking about. They don't want things to appear problematic or they don't want to appear like they're favoring anybody, so they try to have that wall. But I mean, basically all the wall does in this case is if they already don't like a kid or if they're having problems with a kid, it makes that distance between them greater.
Makes the wall even thicker.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's just how it is. Like there are just kids who are going to make you mad. Like there's kids who like, they're going to rub you the wrong way. They're going to ask questions that make you mad. Like, I don't even know why we have to do this. And you're like, oh my God, I'm going to kill you. But you as the adult have to work through that because you have a significantly larger arsenal of coping mechanisms, tools, and like emotional intelligence than the child does. Yeah. And you do have to bring them along, but it's taxing. It wears you down. I mean, even though the show is from a kid's point of view and the teacher, I don't think the teacher comes off looking terrible, but like the teacher is clearly the antagonist. I have a lot of sympathy and empathy for teachers. I'm a teacher. And I know those struggles. In fact, some of the things we constructed in school play, we purposely were like, what would be a really annoying thing for a kid to do? Like, what would make a teacher go crazy? And then we put it in, like the wiggle section where he's just wiggling the whole time and making noise for no reason. I have kids who do that all the time. It drives me nuts.
Now we have fidget spinners and fidget cubes now.
There's a cube? I didn't know there's fidget cubes.
Yeah, there's a cube that's like, that's the first one I saw. The fidget spinner is the one that everybody can easily get, but the cube is like it's a little box that on one side is a little little wheel, and then there's a button, and then there's it's part clicker, it's part roller, it's a spinny thing. It's everything, and it's like $4. So like everybody has one, and now everybody feels like they have always needed one, or like I had a fidget spinner before it was cool. No, you didn't. Just got it because Amazon told you it was the.
Because it's like some kid showed me a fidget spinner, and I was like, oh, I can't stop playing with this. Yeah. The craziest part was I couldn't do any. I was like, I need to invent some tricks to do on here, and I couldn't. I just literally just spun it a bunch and stared at it.
But I think that's how maybe some of those kids who could really whip around a Rubik's cube.
Yeah,
process all that. But I was definitely one of those like tap kids too, and I had I had all this energy, and I'm sitting in the room. I always felt like I used to make a comment that I always felt like I was too much for the room. I still feel like that now. Like, there are places where now I think my day job here, because I work in IT, and I always tell everybody IT is no laughing matter. And I don't find any part of this funny. If you have a problem, I need clear, concise, I need all the answers so I can fix this and get back to whatever. But everywhere else, I was very much like more open and more like, I'm sorry, I just can't. Like, I understand I'm responsible for all 13 of you, but
yeah, right. Well, it's funny, like, I think that a lot of theater types in general, not all of them, but many theater types feel the same way. We're like, I'm just too much for the room.
Yeah.
When you're spending time not around artists, like if you're not with other artists, you're like, oh, am I like a little too much right now? And like, that's something I struggled with.
Oh yeah, because actually, yeah, I think I can definitely tone it down when I'm in a room with working actors. Because they're the ones doing the job, and I'm sort of on the fringe of. I'm always on the fringe of theater because I'm like attending it or talking about it or trying to demystify it. But I yield.
Oh yes,
I yield to the other. To the rest of the energy in the room, and I'm just happy being there.
Yeah,
but
right.
When I'm not there, I'm just like, there needs to be a stage right here in the middle. like 4 points lighting. Let's keep it simple. Nothing too complicated. I've made a joke about weddings because at my day job, we have a lot of weddings, and I've said many times, I was like, if I ever get to the point where I get married, I'm going to treat it like a theatrical production. I'm going to have a stage manager and have a production team because I've done this.
Yeah, a lot.
The element of getting people in here and planning everything out. We have cues. We have all of these things that are scheduled to happen. This is a theatrical production. The only difference is at some point you yield and you're in it.
Exactly.
And now you put the rest in everyone's hands. So that's me on the outside going, I don't understand what the issue is with these flowers, but you've definitely been a director when you're like, that's wrong. Go back and find something else.
We need something totally different. Well, I've known a couple of people who do that. I've known a couple of theater couples who got stage managers to do their weddings. And I remember when I heard that, I'm like, so smart.
Yes. Because they have the poise.
Yeah.
Already know how to handle situations, and if something comes up, you can take care of it because you've already rehearsed this. I know we just had the rehearsal yesterday, but I've had it for the 7th time this week. The wedding rehearsal, So let's steer back to the school play. Yeah. This is what I have to do all the time. Like, where are we going?
Just making like a sharp
so the one thing I liked about the night that I was there is the kids in the front.
Yeah.
Because I like the fact that they immediately gravitated to the cushions on the floor and just realized that they were going to be able to just be so relaxed in this moment. And they actually become part of the experience for the adults. Because there's definitely elements that feel more adult. That are over the kids' heads, but really there's all this action that is exciting the kids. And kids are so precocious now, they probably just get it. It's like, but I really liked that element. And what I was thinking about the 4th grade you is that today I wonder if that kid is considered to be on the spectrum.
Oh yeah, it kind of depends. So because
we just called it hyperactive or Ritalin child, like for the lack of a terminology, to try to like tone it down instead of figuring out how to channel it and actually get the outcome we're looking for.
Yeah, well, so when we built it basically around the idea that so I was diagnosed when I was like 37 with ADHD. And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, you totally have it. And I was like, what now? And then I remember having this, like, the next 2 days was like this just like big life flashback where like a ton of things that didn't make sense before suddenly made a ton of sense. It's like, what? Oh, no wonder. And so when we built it with some ADHD stuff in mind, and we made it like very wiggly, but we also were very conscious, while it clearly probably comes across as very ADHD, that we wanted him to also like be asking a lot of very specific questions and go down these like intellectual rabbit holes, which may or may not pay off for him, because of the fact that like even though we were sort of like using like if this was a soup, our base was ADHD. We sprinkled some other ingredients in there because you do have kids who might not be as wiggly, but they're like on the spectrum somewhere. Or I had a kid who was very functional, had very functional autism, who would come in and take parkour from me, and that was challenging because he processed things differently. He would get frustrated in a different way. And I had to just remember, like, when I would get mad, I had to be like, don't get mad at this kid. Just find a way. But, so we wanted the character to have like little pieces of all of that. And I mean, a lot of it, again, does come back to like, sort of like the hyperactivity thing and not being just well received by his teacher. The reason we sprinkled some other things in there was because when I was a kid, ADHD really wasn't a thing. Like it was, it had been discovered, it was being treated, but it didn't really hit sort of like general public saturation, like knowledge of most parents, until I was like almost done with high school or finished with high school. And so a lot of the problems that I ran into stem from the fact that my teachers just didn't understand that I had an issue, and they were, and they assumed that I was like being bad on purpose. In 10, 15, 20 years, we're going to discover new learning disorders that kids have always had, and we're going to be like, oh, that's why Jenny does this. They're going
to immediately adopt them too, like, oh, that's right. I was just looking for a word for it.
And the thing is that like just because we don't know about them doesn't mean that we can't at least be patient and empathetic with kids now. So we wanted the character to have like, we didn't want to like make it like 100% all out ADHD. We wanted to sprinkle a couple of other things in there just to remind people that like, kids, some of them can be very difficult in certain situations. That doesn't mean that we need to write them off entirely or assume that they're being bad because they want to be bad. Because I don't know any kid
I always have to remind myself that, kids and pets are very similar. They get into a new space and it's so much to take in.
Yeah.
So now there's all this excitement about that and this and these and I have those. And, like now you're trying to just pull in things that you like or that you can relate to, and it's like what's it called,
overstimulation.
Overstimulated, and I always have to say, like, especially in cultural institutions, just like, well, the kid really acting up, or is the kid just happy to be here? Because if the kid is happy to be here, they're going to be loud and rowdy, and they're going to enjoy our space. We have to understand that we do have to give them some of that, but at the same time, we have to, we don't do that in here. We do have a space outside,
Exactly.
Where you can run around and have fun, but... I always, at least for me, in that mindset, I always say, it's not the kids, it's the chaperone.
That is...
The chaperone. The kid is just being a kid.
Kid doesn't know any better, right?
Yeah.
That's how we are when we're 8.
Yeah. I like in the parkour's presentation that you do the flip, and our particular night, you actually did get the kids to get up as if they were part of the class, and And I could see that spot being really exciting as a viewer, but I could see that one going like horribly wrong if a classroom was like, okay, we're going to do this flip right now. And the fact that you have to get so much energy for that. You know, I also thought about, I was the school mascot too.
Oh, were you really?
Yes. And that's where I was able, but it wasn't until like that was my freshman, sophomore year.
Oh, okay.
That was the opportunity I had to really get that energy out. But I just remember like being silly and doing flips and jumping around, and I was like, that's what I want to do in class all day, but I'm like here in this crazy costume.
Yeah, and when I get those kids up, so it's really fun because if there's kids in the front, I know that I can talk them into standing up and we can pretend like we're about to do this thing. If there's not, I have gotten a few adults to stand up on occasion. I think it's because they implicitly trust that I won't make them do a backflip. But yeah, that's the other thing is I wanted to really like demonstrate. It was like the idea that like this kid is so excited about a thing he learned that he's going to teach everyone, because that's what we do, right? We teach people things in schools. But he just doesn't understand that we don't teach backflips in school, right? Because like you need special
especially
equipment.
In a limited space.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's tons of desks you can hit your head on if it doesn't go right.
Can you do that? Like, how do you prepare your physical self
on a good day?
That? Like, because I feel like at least going back to mascot days, like. I needed the energy. I had to have that energy. I can't just, and I'm going to do a flip right now. And the flip is well executed. It's not like that. I've got to psych myself up. And I'm jumping around first before I attempt it.
Yeah, well, it depends.
Have this thought of like, just do it in your head. And I think that's why Nike is like a slam dunk. It's just do it. They're not a sponsor, but they should be.
Right. There's two contexts for this. There's if I'm training, usually I have to put on some music if I'm like in a room alone just practicing.
Was it like Eye of the Tiger?
Yeah, it's usually like heavy metal or something, and something that's got like a hard beat and is going fast. And I take a long time. Like I like do some cartwheels, do some easy somersaults, do a whole bunch of stuff until everything feels really simple, and then I'll start being like, now that my body's warm and now that I feel like a little bit warmed up, I'm going to start doing the harder stuff. But in the show, I have to come out and like that back handspring is like one of the first things I do in like the first like 10 minutes of the show. And I've been doing that long enough that I can do that pretty much without any major problems every night on command. And with that being said, when I run in screaming and I fly my little spaceship around the classroom for a little bit. And then I use the presentation, the parkour presentation where people are laughing to kind of like get that energy you're talking about. Like I get excited, and if it doesn't go smashingly, I have to just like, I'm like, here we go. I'm just going to have to do it because it's one of the only times where I do that in the show without music. But like usually the audience gets me ready, like the audience like gets me ramped up. I do a couple like warm up things in the back. I do a little bit of yoga just to stretch myself out very slowly. Like I have to like, that's how I warm up, is I have to just make sure everything's kind of lubed up and my back and my legs and my hamstrings are all like stretched out. But and then I just have to throw that back handspring. After that the rest of the movement sections, if I'm correct, most of them are underscored by music, including the parkour section, which has that really loud dubsteppy, like, bow, 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 bow. And so that's fine because that sort of like gives me a very quick like boost jolt of energy, and then I can go through. But that back handspring, like I basically have to like have that in my pocket, ready to do it at any given time. And I think that's why that's what I do. Is it's one of the things that I'm the most confident in. There's a couple of other things I do in the show that I don't think I could just do cold.
I could see that in a larger space running down the center aisle. Yeah,
I've done that before actually. Like I did it at a big conference of teachers, and I ran down the center aisle screaming on my way out.
Puts the audience in a zone that this is going to be fun. We're going to have a good time. Please enjoy yourself. Respond the way you feel like you're going to, especially with kids in the audience, that way they feel like they don't have to restrict however excited they are about what they're seeing.
Exactly. That's a big one too, is that like you don't want, I try to set the tone pretty early that it's going to be a loud show and that it's going to be like moving and a lot of fun. Like, because otherwise I feel like it can be tough to pull people along for that ride otherwise. But I mean, I run in screaming. Like I jump off a windowsill like the first thing. And in other shows where we've done other places, I run in from somewhere and I try to just be as out of control as I can be for like 30 seconds to really just get people. They say when you watch Shakespeare, it takes like between 10 and 20 minutes to adjust to the language. I think it's the same thing. I'm like, all right, this is the energy level we're working at, so I have to come in like with all my guns blazing just to get everybody like ready to go and be on the same page. Because on days where the audience is low energy, it's not the worst, but it's tough because I'm doing a lot up there, and when the audience is laughing or really raucous, it makes it really easy. On days when they're a little more contemplative, it makes it a little, I'm like, all right, here we go. We're just going to do this big parkour sequence. Here we, and I'm getting older, so like it takes a toll.
Well, there's also a lot of there's a lot of opportunity for fix and fun. You know, like if something doesn't land, like if you don't land that, you can still play it as if it was part of it. You know, but everything was well executed when we saw it. But that moment was quite funny. You know what I'm talking about. We don't have to talk about that. But I don't know. I appreciate all of those moments about theater in general. And I think that more theater goers need to understand what goes into putting work together, so that they can have that appreciation too. So like, you know, if we go to something at Walnut Street Theater Weeks, you know, there is this psychology of an expectation of perfection. Like there's no room for mistakes. We're seeing, this is kind of like our Broadway. And we're going to see this as perfectly planned as it is. But whenever something doesn't work out, it still continues, and really great actors find a really great way to just continue that. Or like if something drops, it's like, oh, you dropped this thing. And you just throw it right in and it works. And the audience kind of knows that wasn't intended, but it's still carried. And it still plays out. It makes it fun. And that's, again, I feel like every time we have a talk about any show in general, we're talking about why live theater matters, because all of these elements will never be duplicated again. It's like, and it will never feel the same. Even if it's well choreographed and well staged, it just doesn't feel the same way every time.
Yeah, it's really true. And you have to be, I feel like one of the things that I've, I wouldn't say struggled with, but like one of the things that I've really worked to embrace is the idea that there you are in front of these people right now, and you have to really let go of like, and then I do it like this, and I do it like this, and I do it like this, and the people laugh here. Like, I mean, there is an element of having it polished to a point where you know, like I know what my laugh lines are. I know, like, when I say this, they'll probably laugh. But not everyone does, or not everyone laughs as loud, or sometimes your sound just cuts out. Or like you just, and here you are, you're with an audience, and to pretend that this isn't happening, can be, I think, kind of off-putting. So, I mean, you just have to be there with your audience, and you have to just sort of like embrace like what's happening right now. So some audiences are gonna just be laughing and falling out of their chairs, and some people are just going to be like, they're going to find it humorous, and we're going to have some chuckles, and some audiences might not even like what you do, but you have to be there with them. You can't pretend that this is going a very specific way, because it always goes a very specific way, because I planned it this way. You really have to be open to taking in what's happening and like respond kind of in kind, which sounds a little bit touchy-feely or a little bit, but it's the more you do it, the more you realize you're like, like people understand what genuine is, and if you're pretending something else is happening, like they don't get a sense that you're being genuine.
That's why I like in a comedy when there's there's a funny moment, and maybe someone in the audience laughs a little bit louder, and maybe the actor goes like,
yeah,
he gets it.
Yeah.
Like this guy gets it. And it's sort of like that step out for a brief moment of breaking the fourth wall, and you're just kind of like, oh my God, that was for me.
Yeah, exactly. I love moments like that.
This whole show is just for me. Like, now everybody feels like they've got this personal thing in here. What do you want people to take away from school play? What's the message?
That's a good one. I would say that my biggest thing about school play is I'd hope people come away just understanding that we just don't always know. Like, we think we know. Even if you're dealing with other adults, you don't really know where a person's coming from. So it's just important to have patience, have empathy, and truly to get good, is that something I would say? Is to really practice communication. Yeah. And I know that sounds kind of general.
We gotta get gooder at education.
Yeah, we gotta get to be the goodest with all that learns. I think what's really important is to understand, kind of similar to what we were just saying about the audience, is you really have to meet people kind of where they are. And there are situations where maybe someone is acting out of bounds and they need to be corrected or brought up to a different level, a different standard of either operating or learning or what have you. But many times, a lot of situations I observe that are difficult or uncomfortable, many of them stem from this idea that one person thinks they know how things are, quote, supposed to be, and the other person's not playing that game. Or sometimes both people are operating from two very different vantage points. This is how it's supposed to be, and both of them are projecting that onto the other one, and then getting angry when they don't respond the way they think they need to without really talking to each other. The problem we are examining in school play is there's a power imbalance, which is like the teacher is in charge of the room, and this child doesn't really, for the most part, have a voice. I get it.
Even though they outnumber the teacher.
Yeah, and exactly, even though they outnumber the teacher. And there is a certain amount of nervousness on the part of the teacher because, if you have 20 to 30 kids who suddenly decide that they're burning this place down, they're burning this place down.
Oh, yeah.
If they decide they're not going to listen as a group,
that's like Matilda.
Yeah, it really is.
The way Matilda plays.
You're in the dumpster, if that class revolts. But at the same time, there is this power imbalance because, and it wouldn't be a big deal if the teacher were maybe able to take more time to listen. And you know what? I've taught those big classes. The way that the structure is built, the way that we school kids, doesn't allow for that a lot of times, which is also very difficult. I would say, but at the end of the day, patience and understanding for the situation that someone might be in that you might not understand. I really hope that's what people take away, because things that even seem innocuous that you do, especially when it's an adult dealing with a child, can have a pretty big impact because those children's worlds are not as big as yours.
Yeah.
They have school, they have home, they have some friends and a handful of other things, but that's kind of it. So they don't have the freedom to be like, you know what I'm going to do? Not go to this school anymore. I'm going to get a different teacher. This teacher's not working for me. That's not something a kid can do. So
I'm going to cash out this 401k and change my life.
Exactly. Even though adults, we are hemmed into certain situations, children significantly more so.
Yeah.
We have way more options. So I'd say patience, understanding, and kind of meeting people where they are. That's what I would hope people take away from it.
Great. The production is school play. It's part of the Solo Festival. It's at St. Peter's School,
yes.
On 319 Lombard Street.
Yep, right there's the corner. It's 3rd and Lombard, right near Head House Square.
Not the community center, the school.
Right? Yeah. It's a big campus.
Yeah. So you can get we'll have the links online. You can go to SoloFest for more information. You can go to tribeoffools.org for more information. But you have to buy 2 tickets. It's 2 ticket minimum because you have to bring a friend.
Exactly.
Go see the show, School Play. It's a lot of fun. It's a high energy, and you'll walk out with smiles. Terry, it's always a pleasure to chat with you.
Thanks for having me.
And to share or siphon off some of your energy, which you always have every time I see you. And thanks again for joining me today. And it's always hot days. We should find a winter day.
You know what? We do so little in the winter. That's probably why.
We should just plan to meet in February on a snow day and just talk for an hour about random stuff.
That works. I'm usually mad and alone in the winter, so I've got time.
Yeah, it was great talking to you.
You too.
Rep Radio is inspired by our community and listeners like you. Our operation is a fiscally sponsored project of Fractured Atlas. Show your support by making a tax-deductible contribution at repradio.org/support. To join our team or communicate with us, drop us a line at repradio.org. Stay tuned. Rep Radio is on the air.